Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to Pixelpalooza. It's Jonas here again, and we are very excited to see so many of you return to learn more about Pixotope in this 7th session, where we're going to talk about multi-machine setup, keying, and we're basically going to pretend that this is a rehearsal, that we are finished with the project in editor, and we're going to start preparing it for the actual rehearsals and eventually the broadcast. Today's format is going to be a little bit different. I will be joined today by my great colleague, David. I think you're muted, my friend.
Indeed, I'm. Hi, how are you doing, everyone?
All right, David. So why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm David Stroud. I'm a senior product specialist at the Future Group. I've been where I've been for a year, and I've worked on many of the outside broadcast jobs that we've cut and events that we've covered. Before that, I was at NCAN for 7 years and Filmlight and 5D before that. So I've been in the industry an awful long time, and I've got a lot less hair than Jonas. Back to you, Jonas.
Thank you, David. All right, so before we begin, once again, I'm going to briefly mention our setup, which is going to be this screen capture that you see underneath me. And we're also going to have some webcam outputs that's going to show the graphics in better frame rate, as well as the screen capture in better frame rate when that is applicable. And we're also going to have an additional webcam feed for the secondary output when we do multi-machine setup later on. So with that, let's move on. Once again, we're going to talk about today Chroma keying, live event planning, and multi-machine setup. And this is for later, so I'm just going to jump quickly into the editor. So this is basically the handoff. So let's pretend that this project is now finished from the artist's point of view. It's now finished, it's ready to go into live mode for the operators to get hands-on and start to prepare and rehearse for the actual broadcast. What we have open right now is the Pixotope VS sample, which is included with every installation of Pixotope. You can install the demo projects, which has an AR sample and a VS sample. And let's pretend that this is our actual virtual studio that we're going to use for a broadcast. So let's just make sure that the scene is ready so we can put it into live mode. First of all, I'm going to check that we have all the Pixotope actors available. We have the camera root, we have the tracked camera, and we have the material handler and the post-process handler. So very good. We also have a compositing plane, which I have adjusted so it's the correct distance from the camera. And as you can see, if you look through the camera, because you have a little bit of junk on the side there, and that's going to be impossible to key out. So let's put in a garbage mask to remove that. So I'm just going to go to the Pixotope tab and add in the garbage matte plane. Let's rotate that. Oops, my bad. Turn off snapping. Jump back into the camera. Move the garbage mask over. I'm actually just going to scale it down so it doesn't take up so much space. All right, so we moused off that part. I'm just going to parent this to the compositing plane. So whenever we move the compositing plane, the garbage mask will follow along. Excellent. All right. With that, we're going to save our scene. And I'm going to quit the editor. And we'll put this into live mode, like so. And with that, I'm going to hand over control to David, who will take over this presentation now. So hang on a minute. And it's worth mentioning that David is remoting in from his home in UK, so bear with us if things are going a bit slowly. So I'm just going to, all right, David, so you have control. I'm just gonna turn off my webcam for the time being. Let's see.
That's fantastic. Well, thanks, Jonas. And we're going to be starting off by taking a look through chroma keying and what we need to do to pull a good key. But unfortunately, nothing comes without a price. So we're going to do a little bit of theory on this first, just to give a background what it takes to get a good key. So I'm going to go through a couple of slides, and hopefully we can do that fairly quickly, and then we'll move on to keying. So if I can pull this up, bear with me. I'll bring up our slides here. So the elements of keying, we have a number of prerequisites that we have to satisfy before we're going to get a good key. It doesn't happen by magic, and all of these are it's like a serial process. When we look on the left here, we have to have a good physical screen. We have to then be able to light it, both for the screen and for the talent. And then we have to think about our camera and how we set up our camera. Once we've done all of that, and we're happy that that's set, only then can we go ahead and do any keying. So what I want to do is take you step by step through that process and what we do in order to generate a good key. So first of all, let's think about our physical screen. Now, on the previous slide here, you can see it as a fairly well set up screen with good lights high up in the ceiling, fairly reasonable distribution, quite hot at the top. And now we come to our particular green screen in Norway, which is you know, a little bit sad by comparison, but it's under redevelopment at the moment, so it's not going to last very much longer. One of the things we first have to consider is the dimensions of the screen. So both height and width. In terms of the height, what's critical is the height of our presenter. Now, it's basically simple trigonometry, but if you have a 2 meter high presenter and you put your camera down at 1 meter, then the angle up to catch the top of his head is going to go up to about 3 or 4 meters. So typically what you do is you have your camera positioned around about chest height of the presenter, maybe a little bit higher, chest or chin height, so that you're not angling up too much to get the top of their head. Even so, you're going to need 2.5 meters, 3 meters of green screen to allow you to not have the presenter's head cut off. The closer your presenter moves towards the camera, the higher your screen is. So that's why you'll see on very large green screens, you might be ending up with 5 meters, 6 meters green screen walls at the edges, simply to prevent anybody, certainly in low mode shots, from breaking through the screen. So the minimum height you really want to be looking at is 2.5 to 3 meters. That's about what we've got in our studio. We've got just over 3 meters ceiling height, but as you can see, there's a lot of lighting stuff hanging around there. There's no grid at all that we can attach lights to. Now, in terms of the width, here again, it's minimalist. We've got a right angle corner, and it's about 2 meters on either side of the wall, probably 2.5 on one. That's probably the minimum you can get away with and do anything meaningfully, because obviously you want to track your camera around, you want to move around and your talent, and as you do that, you're going to expose them from different angles. You need to keep them all within the realms of the green screen. Where we are having here, where we've got areas where we get towards the edge, then we would use garbage masks, as you just saw Jonas set up, and that will stop us from breaking out of the green screen and continue basically extending the set where we have no green screen. So in terms of height and width, we've covered that. Now, in terms of the floor, we need a green screen floor if we want to show foot contact and contact shadows. Sometimes certain green screens, you don't need to do that, you don't need to consider it. But where you do, you need to come out, and we've come out in a square form here. So we've got 2 by 2.5 meter floor section. That needs to be solid, obviously, to walk on, and it should be non-marking. The type of screen that we use, now screens can be built, there's basically 2 main methods of building screens. You can have a screen like we have here, which is made of fabric and stretched. That suffers from all kinds of issues. It's very quick and easy to put up and quite cheap to install. But as you can see here, we have creases in the screen. We've also got rips where around this curve, we've stretched it too tightly and we've ripped the fabric both top and bottom. And obviously that then presents a problem for us when we come to key. You can also get seams in it. So if you have a joined fabric, you're going to end up with a seam, and that can be sometimes quite difficult to key. Especially if you get a new screen, you often have to steam iron these things to take the wrinkles out as well before you try and stretch them. When it comes to the flooring as well, we have to join up to the floor. The floor and our screen fabric are different materials, and so there's a slightly different shade on them. Plus, you'll note that we have this seam at the bottom, which is really difficult to light and get rid of. So you can make very nice screens out of fabric, but you have to put a lot of time and effort into them to make them work. If you want something more permanent, then use something like a fully constructed screen, plaster skimmed. Something like a ProCyc is going to be perfect. So you get the sections that you build together, you then skim it with plaster, you paint it and finish it, rub it down. So it's like preparing for a trade show, but you're going to get a lot more life out of it. And the paint that you use is incredibly important. So not only when you paint should you avoid brush strokes, you have to do multiple coats. You need to avoid any directional painting at all. And then you have to look very carefully with on-edge lighting to pick up any texture that you've put into the paint. So nothing is easy about doing this. Either method has problems, but the truth of the matter is the more effort you put into the screen, the better it's going to serve you. So we've all been to trade shows and been seeing very good green screens and very poor green screens. The difference is the amount of care. One other thing to mention in terms of floor depth. When our presenter is standing on the stage, we want to keep them a minimum distance of 2 meters from the green screen. The reason for that is we want to minimize the spill that reflects from the walls onto them, and that makes it much easier to key. So you cannot push your presenter right into the wall because it would be impossible to get a good result. Okay, so now if we look on, what I want to talk about is now the lighting, and the lighting specifically of the screen as being different from our talent. So we have to think about the lighting as being separated and treat it as two different cases. Again, from a different angle here, you can see if we were to light along the top edge here and down here, straight down the wall, you can imagine what would happen. We would have a big highlight along the edge of the wall, and then we would fade down through a gradient down towards the bottom, where we would get this horrible puddle of shadow that would be almost impossible to light. So what we tend to do is, if we think out from this wall here, if we put a light fixture where my mouse is and aim down to about the middle of the wall, we will get a spread up the wall, we will get a spread down, and if we have a cove here, which I forgot to talk about in the structure, but if you have a cove, you can avoid having these seams and you'll get a good flow of light into the cove. You also have to light down onto the flooring, but not to create hot spots. So your lighting should be heavily diffused. So use diffusers on them and use more lights than trying to use one big light and trying to get it to cover a lot of area. So think about the planning of this. Another point with your lighting of the screen, do not try to light your screen through your talent. Your talent will not like you for doing it, and you will generate huge, very sharp shadows on your screen as a result. So you won't get even lighting. Now, we've talked about, so what we want is a flat texture, no hot spots, no shadows, and we want to minimize the effect of any wrinkles and rips. The other thing we should talk about is the color temperature, which should be, I tend to set our screen here is set at 3400, but somewhere between 3200 and 4000 Kelvin, which is quite a warm setting. That will make our green warm, but it's much more sympathetic to skin tones. It means we don't ever have nasty magentas that we've got to try and remove from the skin tones. So it gives us a much warmer look. Now, in terms of lighting, how do we light this? Do we light it very bright? Do we light it very dim? Do we light it somewhere in the middle? What do we do? So what I want to do is just take you in a little bit of color science and think about the color model here. At white, we have no chroma at all. There's only white, there's no color to white, and there's no color to black in the YUV color model. Your maximum saturation occurs at your 50% height of luminance. So that's the most saturation is at 50%. Now, we're trying to use fully saturated green as a discriminating factor to remove the background from, or to remove our talent, our foreground talent from the background. So in an ideal world, we'd say about 50%, but that may even be too bright for us. We probably want to light between 30 and 50% illumination on the background to give ourselves a nice flat background with good chroma definition. If you go too dark, you will get noise from your camera. And the sensor noise will be horrible to try and remove. So you're going to get a lot of stochastic noise appearing in the image, and then you're going to fight, and then you're going to want to blur, and then, you know, that's not a route to go down. Give yourself enough light to pull a decent key. If you go too bright, then you're going to lose the chroma resolution for a start, and you're going to start picking skin tones, and highlights are going to get started pulling into your key. The other thing is you're going to do is you're going to generate a huge amount of spill that then reflects onto your talent, and that's not good either. The other thing that overlighting will do, in some ways it's worse to overlight than underlight, is you have to, we're going to talk about the talent lighting in a second, but you have to distinguish your talent lighting and lift your talent out the background. So if your background is already very bright, guess what? You go even brighter on your talent. Now your talent is squinting into the lens, they can't read the auto cue, they can't do anything, and it's very uncomfortable for them. So try not to do that, try to light sensibly, and try to get an even look to the screen. One of the things when we pull a key is, once we pull the initial key, you can see the gradation on the background. You can see if, when you look at the luminance there, you can see if you've got a nice even spread. Okay, so moving on, talking too much, probably. Talent lighting. I'm not going to spend too long here. You'll have lighting supervisors, gappers who can light better than this, and I hope they do. But the essence of talent lighting is really three-point lighting. We need to bring the talent alive from the point of view of the camera. So as you can see here, we have the camera in front of our talent. We have our major light, which is our key light, which is usually about 45 degrees off to the side, and is striking the body, the face and the body here, and creating a strong interest. It's giving life to our character. We have then a fill light, again 45 degrees to the other side, but at reduced intensity compared to the key. And what that's doing is that's filling in the hollows in the image. So where our presenter might suddenly have dark shadows under their eyebrows, or hollows around their eyes or their chin, for example, you want to fill those in so they don't look ghostly or ghastly. So you want to remove the zombie look by giving them some warmth and some fill. The final light that we need to think about is the backlight. And this is a much lower intensity light and shone down onto the back of the presenter. Its intention is to give a halo. It's intended to give you a nice warm edge on your talent, but also to minimize the amount of spill. So it actually helps you to separate your talent from the screen. So once you've got this balance and you're happy, you then have your talent standing in, then we have to think about how we're going to set up our camera. So I'm going to move out of the slides now, you'll be pleased to know, and we'll move back to having a look at our studio and picking up again with Jonas, who has moved all the way over there. Right. Let me, get rid of my slides as well. And okay, so Jonas is standing on the background here. We don't have the luxury of the position, as you can see with our green screen, for very complicated lighting. So he's fairly flat lit. I'm going to ask Magnus to pull in, and we're going to begin to light and to adjust our camera. But just to talk about the camera for a second, of what we have to do. So if you can pull in a little bit tighter, that's great, Magnus. Thank you very much. So we'll hold here for a second. What we've done, we've already white balanced our camera. Why is it important to white balance our camera? Well, the essence is we've changed the white point of our studio by using quite a warm light at 3400. If we didn't white balance our camera, suddenly everything in our scene would look very yellow and very unpleasant. So we white balanced our camera to our screen illumination and to our talent so that we make sure that they're neutral skin tones. That's really important. Then what we do, we're going to pull in on our talent and we're going to focus up so that we can judge the skin tones. So can you just pull focus for me, Magnus? Just pull through focus so we can see. That's it, and then that's great. So just go for the hair and the eyes. That's what we're looking for. So particularly on the hair there. That's very good. Now can you take the illumination of the camera down a little bit, please?
Sure.
And we should see this begin to reduce. You take the aperture down?
Yes, we are 2.8.
Can you take it a little lower? Right, okay. So what we're going to do, we're going to just adjust this to get it more pleasing. But you would have a video engineer, a RAX engineer, first of all setting the color balance on your control panel, then setting the knee and toe and correctly balancing the skin tones. So what I want you to do, Magnus, can you bring up the illumination a little bit? We're just trying to look for a little bit more life and light in the face, in Jonas's face, in fact. So come up a little bit more. That's quite nice. Now you can see we were very flat before. That's what are we at now on the dials?
We're back to 2.7 actually.
Okay. All right. So we're going to try and set this here, but it's important that now we've set all of this, now we're in a position to begin to key. So that's really important. If we were doing multiple cameras, we would have a stand in here and we would balance both cameras at the same time so that we can cut between the cameras, and that will work well. We would still pull a separate key on both of the machines, simply because we're not going to judge that it would be perfect from both points of view. And different cameras are slightly different in the way they behave. But really what we want to do is be able to intercut with the base images between multiple cameras. Okay, so enough talking. Let's see if we can bring back my director control panel. And I'm first of all going to check in production what mode we're in. And I think we should be, yeah, we're in video space. So this is the normal space that we've been used to working in. And we're now going to look at our video keyer here. I'm going to reset the panel. This may be familiar to some of you, but this is where all our controls for the keyer setting are. We go to another panel in order to initialize the key. So I'm going to move into that now. And we're going to grab an image of Jonas there. I may just recapture a new frame. There we go. And I select the background because I'm now going to pick the background. So I'm just first of all going to take a simple strike down here and initialize my key. That has created a key, and I'm going to now look at my alpha channel that's created. So you see this button here, we're going to just send this to the SDI output. You can see at the top of my screen here, at the top you can see the output, the video output is now the key, but I want to look at the detail of it on our desktop monitor because we're going to get better resolution than our webcam output. So let's just inch that out of the way. So looking at this alpha channel, if you follow my mouse, we can see we've got quite good resolution in the hair around here. It's quite fine detail. But over here, it's a little bit unpleasant. We've got some noise running through. We've got some noise running through over here. So what we would then do is come back into our key, and you can see we can now update our key. If I add more stripes into here, we can update that, increase the number of picks. So yeah, that doesn't look to have done too much different. And you'll have to excuse me the speed of operation. So my mouse clicks are going all the way to Norway to make this happen. So a wonderful technology, but here we go. So that's a little better. So we're beginning to refine this key. We're beginning to close this in. Now I can also, if we go out of the picking panel here, I can begin to refine this key as well. So I've got two main controls for doing this. Remove background and adjust foreground. So if I grab my remove background and begin to slide that, you can see, hopefully, that this noise has begun to reduce. Now, using the mouse is fine. What I'm going to do is, if I've selected the slider like this, I can use the arrow keys on my keyboard to nudge. So I'm just nudging the values up and down, and I find that's a lot easier to deal with if I'm trying to make very fine adjustments, especially with the lag I've got with using the mouse. But that's not bad. But I want to show you another way that I typically set up keys, because this refinement, keep going back, adding extra strokes, going back in again, is a little bit boring. We can do it hopefully a little bit faster than that. So I'm going to reset my key panel over here in the corner. That resets all my parameters. I'm going to go back and reinitialize my key, clear this down, grab a new frame, because, can you open your eyes, please, Jonas? Right, that's much better. Nice to see your eyes. Good. Okay, so now I'm going to select the background, and I'm going to begin to pick elements of green kind of around. You notice I'm not going too close to him. There's a reason for that, because if I pick something that is part of Jonas and not the background, I'm going to have to start again with this. So I'm not actually making stitches, but you can see there's a whole series of samples around him that I'm going to use. Why did I do that? Why did I pick there? Why did I not pick over here? Why did I not pick up here? Well, if you can see here, this is slightly brighter. There's some of his shadow here. I don't want to pick those values, because what I want to do is extract him from the background that's near him. So sampling the actual values that are close to him is a better way of pulling an easy key. Otherwise, I'm going to put too much effort in and key out a lot of values that I don't really need. If I start keying at the edge of my shot, then I might be garbage and matting that anyway, so it doesn't matter. Anyway, initialize my key. That's now made that. Let's go back and have a look. Oops. Have a look at our, close this panel. Go back. Now you can see we've still got a little bit of noise. But if I move director out of the way, you can see we've got a really nice key around him there. So I'm just going to adjust the refine background again. I've reset it to 0, so I'm going to nudge it up 15, maybe one less, around there. This is preserving my fine hair detail. Okay, it's important. If he was a wispy blonde, we'd be wanting to keep his hair details and strands of hair away from the green screen and stop. If we come in too tight and too hard on the key, we're going to lose the hair detail, and eventually we'll end up losing the edge detail. So we need to keep it nice and fine. These two values. Now, if I adjust the foreground, you'll see that we adjust this, hopefully, we'll see holes begin to appear. That's what I love about demonstrations. It doesn't always work as you expect. We've got a good key. Okay. I'm going to reset that to its 75% value, roughly. And let's look at, if I move the background up, this is my soft edge between these two values. So if I now begin to move my remove background up, remember what I said would happen. The clumpiness in the hair, the edges become really harsh. Let's see what that did to the image if we then turn off the, and that's looking quite nasty. So let's go back and remove that and take it back down to where we started out, about 12, 13. And his hair looks natural, it's fitting into the background. I'm going to adjust a little bit of the attack on the key. I'm going to change the gamma of the edge of the key and just push that, just change, this is just changing the attack, the profile of that, around about 1.4. Should give us a nice key there. What I'd like to do, can you zoom out for me, please, Magnus?
Sure.
See how this holds up. Are we in auto iris at the moment, by the way?
Check. Yes.
Okay, if you can, yeah, that's fine. Pull out a little bit. So the danger of being in auto iris here is, remember, okay, we can see our virtual set here and it looks fine. But actually in our real set, we had daylight coming through the window to the side. So as I pull back with my camera, if I'm in auto iris mode, the camera is going to rebalance itself and it's going to change its illumination level. That then affects the signal coming into the keyer, and it changes the profile of the key. So you really do not want to be in auto iris mode. So if you could pull in tighter on Jonas again, please. Okay, a little bit tighter, and then, okay, and if you could disable auto iris for me.
Done.
Cool, and then pull out again. You may or may not be able to see this. The resolution that you see on the computer monitor is going to be much better than you see on the output. The output is unfortunately heavily decimated because we're taking it through a webcam to display to you. But you can see the match between those two images anyway. So that's not bad. I do want to show you one other thing here while we're talking, because we've talked a little bit about spill. I'm going to despill, take my despill value right down, and now we can see the degree to which Jonas is polluted by the spill in the scene. So you can see around his hair, around the edge here of the t-shirt, and you will find on the edge of the arm as well. It's not bad, but we need the despill to correct this. Could you pull in and give me a head and shoulders shot again, please, Magnus? So now, just looking at this again, you can see that there is an edge here. It's not bad. We haven't got a lot of reflection from the screen. It is polluting his hair. It's line of sight. It's the direct bounce from, sorry, I'm pointing here. It's the direct bounce from the rear wall through his hair that's causing that highlight. This would be really improved by using a rim light, as would the definition around his neck and shoulders here. So this would give us a much better look. We have ways to try and improve that, and we'll do that in a second. So let me just bring director back because I lost it. Bear with me a second. I have lost my director panel.
I'll fix it. Hold on.
Yeah, thank you very much. It would take too long to get on a plane to get to Norway to fix this. So thank you, sir. Okay. So let's turn our spill back on. So far we've been working in video mode. What I want to do is I want to go and have a look now in linear mode. and talk about some of the benefits of that. So if we move, I'm going to reset this panel again. Of course, you know, we're going to come back and do all of this again, but we're going to do it in linear mode. So going to composite here, I'm now going to select linear space. Now, those of you who know Unreal fairly well will know that within Unreal itself, there's all the image space is linear. So we are always working in linear space, but we're not restricting ourselves in color space by just using the everything is composited together in linear space, but then we're using the filmic tone mapper, and we're restricting the color space quite a lot by being in pure video mode in Rec 709. So this allows us to get much better resolution of details and much better post-production of post-volume effects by using linear mode. What you will notice, and I'll draw attention to here straight away, is our output monitor is now looking different to our viewport monitor. And the reason for that is that what we're displaying here is a linear image, and here we're viewing it with a Rec 709 shaper LUT on the output. So they are different. Now, that's a feature, if you like, of Pixeltoken 1.2 at the moment. In the next version, we will have the same outputs display control that's available for the viewport as well. So you'll see consistency between the output and the display monitor and the viewport monitors. But at the moment, there is a discrepancy. But you should always be judging your output on a proper reference monitor anyway. Whatever you're producing to go live, it should be looked at on a reference monitor. Okay. Right. Enough gab. Let's go to the keyer again. And we're going to go in and initialize our key. And select my background. Okay, and initialize the key like that. And let's look at our alpha channel. And you can see it looks a lot noisier than we. This is because of the profile of the data. Yeah, that noise was always there. It was just in very much in the low lights. So let's close that. I'm still happy with the edge of the edge detail here though. So I'm just going to remove a little bit of background. And you see it's the similar sort of amounts. Okay, 13, 14, that's not too bad. Let's change our gamma again. Not bad. Okay. We have a series of other controls here you can play with at your leisure. If you're going to download the or you're going to get a trial build, you can play with this yourself. I tend to avoid using erode wherever possible. It's fairly aggressive for edge control. If you've got really bad edge problems, you can use it, but it tends to remove noses and ears as well. So I'm not a fan of that. Blur as well. You can add a little bit of blur, but again, beyond a small amount, you begin to disrupt the image. So that should now have pulled a reasonable quality image. Let's have a look at our key. Okay, so that looks pretty reasonable to me, certainly on the viewport monitor. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to try to give a little bit more life to Jonas, to actually bring a little bit of a look into him. Now we can do this. We could do this with the lighting in the first place, but I'm going to do it with the color grading. And now I'm going to, because of the discrepancy between the monitors, I should really be viewing this on my output rather than on the viewport monitor here. But anyway, let's have a look at the video. I'm going to enable our color grading. And I'm just going to give him a little bit more because he's looking a little bit flat. Going to give him a little bit more saturation. Let's see if I can. And I'm going to leave gamma contrast alone. I'm going to go into gamma and just try to give a little bit more definitions to the mid and lows there, and just put a little bit more light through him, add a little bit of gain in here. So I'm hoping that's an improvement. And I just enable and disable, we can see the changes that I've brought in. So you can see there's a little bit more life and to that, a little less flat. And we've got a little bit more crunch in, I might just edge the gamma down a tad more. Let's try there. And let's look at that on and off. So that's pretty cool. I'm happier with that. It looks like it fits a lot better. Now, what I can of course do, having done this is just isolating on my video extract. What if I want to do a little bit of a look on my whole scene? Well, I can come in and select my final output. And this is taking my composite, it's further down the pipeline. It's taking the composited foreground and background, and then we're grading both of them together. So let's see how this hangs together. I'm fighting a little bit with this. What I'm going to try to do is reduce the size of my controls and then scale director down so I can move it a little bit. Normally I wouldn't do this. Normally I'd have director on a separate monitor to make it a little bit easier for me to work with. And of course, because I'm grading, I would be looking on my output reference monitor and not looking at this monitor. But anyway, let's now just play with our gain here. So if I pull my gain all the way down, so the whole of the image is moving quite nicely together. It's not becoming, I'm not getting any limiting, I'm not getting any clipping at all at any time. So you can see when we push too high, we may be, I need to think about that, but we have a nice control, a general control. We can push the saturation of our whole image. Okay, so what I want to do, that's cool. I want to move on and just have a look at an effect here. I want to have a look at our balloon control. So we have behind Jonas, we have an artificial light. I'm going to enable the bloom from that. And we should see, okay, so I'm going to turn it to a convolution bloom. And you see now with the convolution bloom, how much nicer that is to illuminate his face. Can you use your hand, the other hand through that? That would be great. And we can play with the threshold. We bring it up, it's going to burn a lot more. Try and take that down a little. But nice creative control. So, yeah, thank you for that. I was just about to get to the water bottle. It would be nice if you can pull the bottle to your other side so we can see that it's not picking up any green and that there's no spill issues with the bottle. Everyone likes to see water bottles, don't they? I mean, you know, it's the whole thing. So you can see there we're not getting artifacting or any issues with the water bottle, and it's behaving very well with the light from and with the bloom. So this is the kind, can you move your head a little bit towards the light again, please, Jonas? Just inch to your left a bit. That's it. Back a little bit. Back towards the right a little bit. I'm just looking for it to touch the side of your face. So we can begin to see what I'm talking about here is the way that the light is being picked up in the hair. If we had a rim light as well, this is extreme compared to a rim light, but we would be getting this contribution from the backlight, which would be swamping any spill. So whereas we saw the spill in his hair before, this would help to control that. But you can see that this is a much more photorealistic effect, and it's much more pleasant than we would otherwise get. So with that, I'm quite happy that we've been able to pull a key both in linear and in standard video space. We're just going to have a little bit of a look at the focus here as well, the defocus effect. So could you rack focus for me, Magnus? Because we've calibrated this camera and we're getting focus distance and we know what the actual focus characteristics of this lens are, as we rack focus, we're changing the focus of our set objects along with the focus of Jonas in the foreground. So once more through that, if you would, with the focus, pull it right out of focus. And back through again, please. Okay, very cool. All right, so I think at this stage, we've finished with our Kia. Please at any time, add your questions, send them in the chat. We're going to go through the rest of this presentation, and then we're going to take your questions at the end. But the next part, we're going to release Jonas from the set, and he's going to move back to his desk. Thank you very much for your help. We're going to run across the office, and we're going to set up for multi-machine control. But what I want to do, unfortunately for you, I'm going to go back into some slides here, and we are going to look at those for multi-machine. First up, though, we've done, at the Future Group, we've done a lot of live events. We've been on site a lot of times with Pixatope and handled, well, we've handled Super Bowl twice. We've done the Eurovision Song Contest. We've done the League of Legends. We've done Red Bull Rampage. We've done an awful lot of live events. And each time we go, there are challenges that we find. It's never easy. And so planning for live events, and hopefully you guys are going to be going out there and doing live events and doing it with Pixatope. So we want to share our experience with you and show you what we go through, our checklist that we go through. So essentially, in terms of the elements, there's four basic areas. The advanced planning is the bulk of the work. It's getting everything right before we turn up on site. It's making sure all eventualities are covered, that we know we have the everything about the event. We know the size, we know the camera plots, we know the type of cameras, we know the lenses, we know the tracking system. We understand who we're working with, who the other vendors are. All of these elements that we put into advanced planning, and of course, knowing what the budget is, that's very important. Then we come to the logistics. How many people on site? How are we going to get there? Where are we going to stay? How are we going to get transport? Who's going to feed us even? These kind of important things, but also how is the kit moving in? What's the supply chain? What's the delivery period for this? Is it going to arrive on time? Are we going to send people halfway around the world only to have the kit not turn up because it's stuck in customs or because it's a public holiday? Then we come to tech setup. It's everything we do when we get on site. It covers things like security and credentials, but also moves on into what's our timing, what's our plan for technical setup, when do we get a position to move into, when are the cameras going to be ready, when can we start to do tests, what is our rehearsal schedule. We have to test everything through. And then finally, the on-site delivery is the interplay between as creatives or supplying creative elements. We have to work with the producers. How do we deliver that? What's the communication protocol? How do we make sure we deliver on air? How can we make sure everybody knows their task? All of this is in this handy document, which we've put together for you, and that you can go through at your leisure and build your own spreadsheets. But at least if you use this as an aid memoir, you're not going to miss anything big because we've already done it. So I will move on down. I'm not going to talk through these elements anymore. But one very important thing I always feel when you've completed a project is the final point, is the wrap party. Please don't skimp on that because you would have worked hard and you will deserve it. Or I always feel so. Okay, so let's go back to my slides quickly and 2 more, and then we're going to do the multi-machine setup. So we have our project set. We're all ready to go. We're on site. We've got to configure our machines. How have we set them up? This workflow shows 3 machines. Excuse me, just grab a glass of water. Anyone who knows me will know I can talk for hours without stopping. So Frank and I have a lot in common that way. We have 3 cameras, and each of them has a tracking system, and it's coming to the individual renderer. We could, of course, use a single camera tracking server and pipe all our cameras into that and then spray the output from that tracking server to these 3. But that would make our camera tracking server a single point of failure. So if that, heaven forbid, went wrong, how would we recover? All of our cameras would have gone. That would be disastrous. So we try and limit our exposure to single point of failure by taking the cameras into each system. We run a camera tracking server here, and we always have a backup position, a backup camera, and a backup server, so that if one machine dies, that's no problem. We can move, and there's a live running backup. Also, for example, if we think about the job we just did for the Super Bowl with the Famous Group, our main camera was on a Skycam web camera, and SMT were doing the tracking for us. That was our beauty camera, that was our go-to camera, it was everything. If that had gone down, we wouldn't have been able to pull the shots we did on that 7-minute presentation. So we had another system running in parallel, taking the same feed from the camera, the same tracking data, and duplicating the output. So that at any point we could have switched at the vision mixer could have switched that and taken the backup output, and we wouldn't have lost the feed. Obviously, if that camera had fallen out of the sky, then that would have been a little bit more of a problem, but we also had another backup high and wide camera that could accomplish most of those shots. Without going into this too deeply, the other thing to talk about is networking as well. The machines need to work together. They need to be on a common network because we're going to want to share projects between them. We probably will be running a per-force server. If you remember the source control sessions we did earlier in the week, we want to keep our projects somewhere. We might have a home team that's adding assets into that source control project that we need to pull on site. So we're going to need to have an internet provision to be able to pull the project across onto these machines and synchronize the project so it's the same on all. So we're going to use a separate network to do that so that we don't put any pressure on our tracking network. We've separated off our tracking data into a separate switch and supplying that individually to the Pixotope engines. Why do we do that? Tracking data is not that big. It's not that much. But the problem with tracking data is it's very much of the moment. A tracking packet is only valid for the video frame it goes with. Beyond that, it's worthless. So if your tracking data is delayed or it's interrupted, then you're not going to get that, and you're going to see a hop. You're going to see a jump frame because you didn't get the tracking data. We can try and interpolate that data. We can try and fill the gap, but it isn't going to be real data. So we want to ensure that our tracking is as seamless as possible, and taking all our tracking systems and piping it through one server, in our experience, as very valid, and it's proven itself on many live events. The problem would come is if you had somebody else on this general network that suddenly started some large copies across the network. Then what's going to happen to our tracking data? It's only little, but it's going to be forced to wait. So having a separated topology like this gives us redundancy as well. We could change a switch in a heartbeat. We could change, even if we lose one of our cables, we can still run on others. It's very easy to wire and to manage. Okay. Of course, we have Director running on all three of these machines. One of the machines has a data hub, and the data hub, if you recall, is how we pass messages between the machines. So Director, we use one Director as a control interface that passes messages via the data hub to the directors that are running on the other machines. So if we look at our interfaces, the two main interfaces in Pixitope that we've been covering this last 7 days, we have the director interface, which is our technical setup, and it's also for operation control. But it allows us to do multi-machine control, and that's what I'm building up to here. We have our Pixitope editor, which we've spent a large amount of time in for the last week, doing our creative work. But when it comes to going live, we're going to go into live mode. We don't want to encourage changes on the fly. We can still make changes via director if we have to, for position and for certain parameters, but we don't want to make wholesale changes. The other thing is that the timing will change between being in editor mode and in live mode. Everything is that much snappier in live. All your sync delays for your tracking and your video should be done in live, not done in the editor, because you can't guarantee that it's not going to be as fast. And everything is about the speed of delivery. So we want to make sure it's fast and reliable. The other thing to mention in terms of our render output, of course, when we're supplying an output to the world, we're taking our live output. We're not taking the viewport. When we're in the editor, our viewport is what drives the resolution of our render. So if we scale our viewport down and then look at our SDI output, what you'll see is a very much reduced quality image. It will be upscaled from a low resolution copy. If I make my editor screen full screen by hitting F11, then I'm going to get a much better representation, but of course, I don't have any of my UI. So the output quality in editor is very much gauged by the size of your viewport. When we go into live mode, it's different again, because in live mode, we make the viewport window the same size as our output definition. So it's a one-to-one pixel match, and so we get the highest quality for the video output. So that's another reason why you should be viewing everything in live to make to make decisions. Okay, so that is the end of my slideshow. You'll be pleased to know we're going to move back and we're going to go into our multi-machine setup. So let's do that. And
You need a helping hand, David.
yeah, I could use a helping hand, please, to just bring this back.
Yeah, will do. So for this, we're actually going to switch the project back to the one we've been using for this past week, the Pixapalooza project. We need to make sure that we launch the level in live mode. As you can see, we have a list of both machines. We're going to launch both machines at the same time. And just for a quick setup.
It's very nice to have you back on board, Jonas. I missed you.
Thank you.
How was the traffic back from the green screen?
Mild. All right, so I'm just going to make sure that our tracking settings and routing settings are refreshed and working. Let's see, I'm just gonna hit resend to make sure that we get the correct video signal again. And here we are.
Okay.
So back to you, David.
Okay, can we just, is Magnus there? Can we just move the camera and check that we've got tracking in this? It looks like it's set. So this is our AR camera in the AR scene again.
He just left, but I'll move the camera.
Okay, all right, thank you. You see, there's very few of us around at the moment, and we all have to be multi-skilled. And so if we look in our output there, we can see that that is tracking quite nicely. We also have another camera in this scene as well, and we're going to bring up the output view of that. But I guess we'll wait for Magnus to bring that. Can we bring up the other output?
Yes, Magnus, can you bring out the other output as well?
Yes.
Can we have the two simultaneously, or are we limited to 3 webcams?
I can disable mine in that case. Yeah, Magnus is on the case.
Okay, all right. So let's see how we go with this. Good. So let's go into production here. Right,
Here we
so
are.
we've got 2 outputs. That's brilliant, thank you. We will notice again, I'm going to make the point about our color space. As you can see here, the difference between our linear space and at the top on what says Jonas's output, that is that's correct, and you can see there's a reasonably close match between that output and the render 1 output. So just to talk about the setup here, our AR camera is a tracked camera. That's using Moses tracking. When we were doing the green screen, we were using an NCAM system for tracking. So it doesn't really matter to us which tracking system we use. We can use many and all. The camera here that says render 1 output, that is just a static camera. We've placed it on a tripod. We've measured a position and we've dialed it in. We've dialed in the field of view, and we have dialed in the position. So the dot appears to be sitting in the chair. But that isn't tracked. So we've got 1 manual tracking, the AR camera here is using Moses tracking, and that's giving us our 2 camera shot. Okay, right, so I'm going to, because this is the wrong color, I'm going to try and make this director a little bit larger. Wrong, that wasn't what I wanted to do at all. Let's go within the focus here. No, okay. So now I'm straight, never mind. I'll suffer with it. Okay. So let's go to object just. We're going to pick this. And I want to draw your attention to 2 fields here. We have on this top corner here, we have we have the read from address. So this is where we're reading the data from, and here is, so we're using 1 system as a master, and we're then replicating that to 1 or more machines over here. So we've got to resend or send to, and if I pull down on here, you can see we've got 2 machines selected. Okay, so yeah, I also should mention the delays that we've got here. It is quite laggy in terms of performance. I'm sorry about that. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn off the Studio Render 1, and so the Render 1 output won't take these actions. And then what I'm going to do, I fancy just removing dot from the chair. So we're going to go to objects here. I'm going to find dot. I know it's a blueprint somewhere. Oh yeah, so here's the one. Here we go, and let's just adjust. And you'll see if I click on visibility, and I should.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is tricky to pick the scroll bar at the side.
Yeah. There you go.
There we go. All right, so in the end, if you persist, you will get there. Okay, so I'm going to turn off the visibility, and you can see that dot appears from my AR output, but is still in position on render 1. So I can bring him back, but if I want to then change my settings and bring this renderer back in, so we're treating them both as a pair. And now I'll try and roll down again. That's good. So I used the scroll wheel there rather than try and pick it. That was kind of handy. Thank you, Oyston, for that input. And let's turn them off, and they both disappear from the chairs. So it's a pretty simple but obvious way of demonstrating that we can do multi-machine control. Now, what we should look at as well, maybe let's have a look at a little bit about post effects here. Now, I'm not happy particularly about the match in the color here between the two. I can see that the red here is a little bit more vibrant. I might want to just adjust the color a little bit just in our fixed camera. So how can I do that? If I go to color grading and we pull this up, you can see I'm reading from my desktop machine. If I want to just write to my render one output, I can't actually disable this because that's my read machine. I'm getting my parameters from there, even though the two are in sync. So what I have to do first is change my read machine here and say I'm going to read from that machine and I'm going to write back to that single machine. So I'll turn off the desktop here, that one, and now I should have control just over the color grading here. So let's change graphics. Oh, sorry, no, it's the video. It's the video I want to adjust, and I'm going to grade this. Now, it looks to me a little bit like, looks like there's a gain difference. So again, just, and we should see a change occurring. You can see if I pull it up and go silly, it's much higher. This could just be the difference between two cameras, of course. So I'm going to nudge that down a little. Gamma looks all right. Saturation, let's just play with that a little bit. Maybe there. And now what I'm going to do, this looks a little bit more orange to me. And so I want to balance this in a little bit. So let's go on individual gain. And I'm just going to play with my red value a bit. And try and balance. You know, I'm quite happy with that. I think overall that's not bad. You can see I've changed the balance of the red versus the green and the blue. So I've given it a little bit of a tint, but I've got overall gain control on the master slider here. So I'm pretty happy with that. Let's turn it off and on again. Let's see what the difference is. See if I've wasted my time. So it's actually relatively subtle, but I like the fact that this is now looks like the same shade of purple as we've got over here. Maybe just take the overall gain down a little. So let's shut it down.
Need to enable it.
Yes, sorry. Okay, maybe there. So if we then go back into controlling both machines together, and I will enable here, send to both machines, and I'm going to use this as my master, read from. Okay, so now if I want to gain everything together, then I can do that. I think I may have lost my settings there, but anyway, you get the idea of what I'm doing here. Let's have a look maybe at maybe have a look at some of the light wrap effects. And to do this, I think we'll bring in the other dots. Should we do that through the control panel first, do you think, Jonas?
Yes, so let's actually showcase how we can do this using our control panel from another interface. We
Okay.
talked about this in the past, but we haven't really showed it. So here I have the control panel right here on my phone. And if I zoom in on the top here, you can see we are connected to the two machines. And I can also toggle dot entering by hitting this. And you should now see it on both outputs. There we are.
That's very cool.
And
So
how you would
did
go
you
about doing this is that you go to this button in the control panel and you copy the local URL and you just paste that into your browser and you have the control panel. You can demonstrate this by opening up in the browser. Once again, easy. Back to you, David.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. Yeah, that's really handy because then it means that anybody with a wireless device that's attached to the same network can control the action from anywhere. It could be your directory, it could be your talent. So that makes it very easy to go mobile with this. Okay. So now we have dot in there. I was going to just have a little look at some effects for a second. Let's have a look at, sorry. Okay. So we could look a little bit at light wrap as well. Let's enable this. This is a subtle effect that we're going to get. And if we just bring up our alpha blur, we should see something begin to affect.
And once again with this, we encourage you to have your attention on the outputs, not the actual screen capture.
Maybe I should go full screen with that then to prevent that. Yeah. So now let's just adjust this. You may be able to see better on there the controls here. It's kind of difficult for me adjusting these, but we can begin. If we look at Jonas's output there, we can see with the alpha blur that it begins to bleed through the seat, and just bring that down, nudge it down a little bit.
Yeah, it's starting to look pretty good. Subtle.
Bring this in, yeah. Okay, so that gives me a bit of a ability to see that a little bit better. What about shadows? Should we have a little look at shadows?
Yeah, let's do that.
So there we are. We can see we've got the global intensity value of 0.25. We've now got some subtle shadows on the floor. We don't want to make them too sharp, but you can see we've got the range. We can add them in and match them to our scene. Well, that's pretty cool. So just enable and disable, you can see that's working quite nicely.
And just to kind of explain this, we're not running ray tracing right now, so that's why the shadow looks a bit hard on the edges.
Yeah, okay. Let's have a look. I'm wondering whether we want to see, we've looked at bloom. There are a bunch of other effects we could do. I mean, just for giggles, I nearly said something else. But anyway, just for giggles, we could just look at chromatic aberration if you're looking for a filmic style of effect. You can see we're separating the colors and treating the refraction differently of the planes. Maybe not too much of that. Otherwise, I'll have to run away and clean my glasses. But we have a whole series of effects here that you can use to enhance the image. Okay, let's go back to our control panel here, and we can synchronize everything together. Now, I'm going to make dot leave, and then off he goes, and bring him back again. He will come back in his own good time, open his chest, and we can play back showreel on his chest. And you notice that the machines are playing together. We can start to juggle. So he's multi-talented, multi-skilled. We can even toggle the ball color. Hey, I'm not making any jokes about ball color. So you can see we have a lot of control over him, and it's synchronizing between both machines. The point of showing you this is that this is just 2 machines we're controlling. If we had 4 machines, 6 machines, we want those to synchronize together. And it's really important that they trigger at the same point. So we would want a control panel that is if it's a director's decision to bring something in on his cue, then we would hit a button. But a lot of times, if you're working on a production, especially if there's music involved, if we think back to the LPL that we did, the finals that we did in China in August, that was all hitting the beat for a rap that was playing back, and everything had to be synchronized very carefully. So the only way to do that is then to use time code playing back with the audio, and everything in that production was synchronized to time code. So everything was synchronized to time code. The point with that is that we had pyros, we had lighting effects, we had downlights, projections. Everything had to be synced together, and the only way to do that then is to take an LTC input. So that's what we did. We did that also for the Super Bowl as well, and so we could synchronize all the camera choreography as well. That is really important. So we went through the master blueprint system, the baseline blueprint earlier in the week, which exposes how we control timecode triggers. So we'd have a single timecode reference coming into the machines, being put out to all of the machines. They're all set up the same so that the triggers are identical, and they would all trigger in sync. One of the things you may have noticed as we're sitting here and watching, even though dot juggling is in sync, the waving from dot sitting down is out of sync. That's because those are idle animations and the machine started at a different time. So that's why they're running out of sync. They're not synchronized on, they weren't brought into sync on the same clock. So maybe we should give Dot a break and allow him to leave, but leave behind his arms maybe. Okay. And so now we're running to the end of this. We'll get him to exit and hopefully stop juggling and exit and take your arms with you. There we go, they fly off. And so that concludes our presentation for today. And this is the last session of Pixelpalooza for the current round. But what we're going to do now is take a 5-minute break, when we'd love you to add your questions into the chat so that we can come back and discuss those in 5 minutes time. So get busy on your keyboards, type in lots of questions, and we look forward to welcoming you back very shortly. Thanks.
All right, and we are back. Are you still there, David?
Coming in now. How's that?
Excellent. Are you
Great.
ready to
Okay.
take on some questions?
Let's go for it.
Yep.
Once more with feeling. Let's do this thing. Good.
Yes.
So our first question, will the slides be made available after the webinar? It would be handy to be able to review slides like this with a multi-machine workflow for future reference. Well, yes, absolutely. We can do that for you. The aim of sharing this information is to make it easy for you to use Pixatope. So absolutely, we would love to do that. We'll make a note and send those on. Number 2, we don't have many questions today, but excellent presentation. David and Jonas, thank you very much. We appreciate it. I have a question. Can I control Pixatope's actions and trigger animations through an external application? I'm not sure totally on the answer of this. Certainly, we can control operations remotely. We do that with timecode all the time. We can do it with other devices like trigger devices, pointers, that sort of thing. You can take a bytecode from those, wire that through a blueprint, and have that trigger in the same way as you would use a control panel. But I'm not sure. We also have an API which allows us to take in data feeds as well. So we can do, we did show data generated weather, and we can do data generated bar graphs and whatever for elections and so forth. So there are a lot of ways that you can pipe information and control into Pixatope. I'm just wondering whether you have anything more on that, Jonas?
No, that sums it up pretty nicely.
Okay. But yeah, for certain, those sort of interesting applications where we can work with other devices and synchronize with them, please talk to us. We're always happy to look and do these sorts of things if it's easy to do. We're really looking to extend the integration. Okay. Will the slides from each day's courses be available for download as a PDF? We could do that. Yep, that's no problem. That's exactly the same as the earlier point. So we could make the presentation available. That's quite easy.
Definitely.
Okay.
Okay, so yeah. Moving on for the final slide of this presentation. And this actually concludes the final session of the main Pixapalooza webinars, but there is more to come. So stay tuned for more Pixapalooza goodness starting in mid-April. Let's all of us take a little Easter break and relax a little bit. But after the Easter break, we're going to come back with more content, including WizRT workflow integration with Pixatope, most playlists and pages on Pixatope with the Resource Studio, motion capture in Pixatope, as well as type follower and Pixatope. So I hope you all are very excited about that after Easter. And thank you so much, everyone, for sticking with us for these 7 days of Pixapalooza. It's been a great pleasure to present this material to you and to see that you all are so excited about Pixatope. And yeah, do you have anything to add, David?
No, I mean, these are difficult times and we're all doing the best that we can. I'm sure we're all stuck at home and wanting to get out in the sunshine and live our lives, but we have to be careful. But it's a great opportunity for us to get to know you, to be able to talk to you about Pixatope, which we're really proud of and very happy with. And we'd love to continue doing that. So in lieu of NAB, this isn't the same as going to Las Vegas, but it's a way for us to begin to communicate with you. And we're going to do this more and more. So hopefully you'll come along with us. But in the meantime, have a great Easter, wherever you are. Relax, put your feet up, have some good downtime and be safe. Thank you very much.
All right. Goodbye, everyone.